All right, I think we might get started, everybody. I'm conscious it's the end of a work day here for those in Australia. I will begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, water and community. Welcome to this webinar today, Navigating Your Nursing Career Down Under. So we've put this webinar together specifically for nurses and midwives migrating to Australia, either in the process of or considering it. My name is Kath Baird. I'm the Director of Skilled Migration Services here at the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Accreditation Council. I'm a registered nurse. Emergency nursing is my background, and I've been here at ANMAC for just over 9 years. I'm here today to walk you through the process, talk about what regulation is, what is it about the role that we play in skilled migration services that feeds into the general skilled migration program. I'll touch on the different application types. We do have the option for you to ask questions. I won't say I'll be able to answer all of them in this session. We did have an overwhelming number of people wanting to join this webinar, so we will do our best to address most of them. I will also leave contact details at the end of the presentation for you to send an email through if you've got any additional questions. So I'll begin. As I said, there's a Q&A box now open, now live. This webinar is being recorded and we will be putting the recording up on our ANMAC socials over the coming week or so. And we have muted you all. I'm sure you can understand why we've done that. And I did see a hand raised before. We won't be answering questions other than ones that are put in the Q&A box. All right, a little bit of a data snapshot. This is data received from the Department of Health just a couple of days ago. So I think we're looking at June, I think the latest data was June 2023. So we've currently got over 440,000 registered nurses and midwives registered to practice here in Australia. There's lots of workforce data out there. The most recent data suggests that we've got a 26,000 nurse deficit by 2026, but confident that with the 75,000 approved student intake places across universities in Australia, including TAFEs and RTOs for their diploma enrolled nurse qualifications, we can probably fill that need. Interestingly, in discussions with colleagues at the Department of Health around what's driving this shortfall, a lot of it is nurses typically don't work full time because of how full on the load is when you're working clinically. So I know, speaking from experience, I was always 0.8. I only ever worked 4 days a week because when you factor in night duty and having to turn around and back up with day shifts, it's a big load. So there's lots of theories as to why there is a shortage, but we do believe that with a renewed thinking, I'm pretty sure there's a consultation happening at the moment from the Department of Health on workforce. So if you do have some thoughts on that, I encourage you to jump onto the Department of Health, Federal Department of Health website and have a look at that, that opportunity. So healthcare regulation. So why is there regulation? Why do we have to make sure things are done properly? So I've just put here very briefly, healthcare regulation sets the standard for service delivery, ensuring practitioners are safe and effective at providing high quality care. So as end users at different times, as a patient, we all want to be confident that the nurse that's putting a cannula in your arm is suitably trained and qualified to be doing that. Healthcare regulation more broadly, it includes accreditation of individuals, but also organisations. So I know, having worked here for 9 years, we are not hospital accreditation. And when I tell people who my employer is, they automatically assume it's hospital-based accreditation. We accredit education programs that lead to registration to practice. So that's that difference there. but also accreditation includes the monitoring, reviews, investigations and complaints. So very closely linked, and we do a lot of work with the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency and the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia. So on the right-hand side there, I've just highlighted there's three main entities. So AHPRA and the NMBA are one entity. The Nursing and Midwifery Board sits underneath the AHPRA umbrella. So all the registered health boards sit underneath the AHPRA umbrella. ANMAC then feeds into the work that ANMAC does feeds into the registration of nurses by accrediting, ensuring that the programs that our registered nurses, midwives and enrolled nurses are completing have been accredited. I'll touch on that briefly in the next slide. The approved programs of study list is important to know. If you're overseas based and you're thinking about coming to Australia and you're pretty certain you're going to need to top up your nursing qualification, our recommendation is always please go to the Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia's approved programs of study list. This is a list. The link is here, which obviously you can't click on, but you just go onto the NMBA website and make sure the program that you're studying is on this list, because if it's not, your program won't lead to registration, and that's an issue for you. Not only is it going to cost money, it'll take time, and you don't really want to be wasting your money on a course that isn't going to get you the registration and subsequently migration to Australia. If you've got any specific questions about that, we didn't include that in the previous webinar that we ran, but more and more we're seeing a couple of students come through that you can see in their study history that they've completed a qualification that hasn't led them to registration, which has prolonged their migration journey and registration to practice by about 2 years. So ANMAC is an assessing authority. So that's the work that we do. So in Australia, there's about 52 independent assessing authorities. So they're allocated by the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations, and the work that we do feeds into visa application and processing with the Department of Home Affairs. So we are an independent assessing authority assigned by the Australian government to undertake migration skills assessments. We are responsible for providing advice to government on an applicant's suitability for skilled migration. We are not a government agency. We are a not-for-profit fee-for-service. So the money that you're paying us to do your skills assessment, that's how much it costs us to do your skills assessment. We aren't in this to make lots of money. We are not an employer for overseas nurses, midwives or aged care workers, nor are we responsible for nursing and midwifery registration. This is a function of the NMBA and AHPRA, which I've just touched on. And there is a lot of confusion, and rightfully so. ANMAC and AHPRA, whilst they don't sound the same, they both start with an A. I think when you begin this process, it is quite daunting. So ANMAC is the skilled migration side, and then the NMBA and AHPRA is a registration. So who are skilled migration services? So we're a group of individuals that come together 5 days a week. We assess qualifications, periods of paid work experience, which then leads us to be able to determine an outcome and provide you with an ANSCO code. We assess internationally qualified nurses, midwives, and international graduates. So people who have completed nursing midwifery programs in Australia or New Zealand, or who have completed their program and are registered in Australia or New Zealand. Some of you will be aware of the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition. So that is applicants who obtain registration in New Zealand are eligible for the TTMR, which we refer to it as. And so that automatically gets them registration to practice as a nurse or a midwife in Australia, depending on what it is they're registered as in New Zealand. I am just briefly going to touch on the aged care industry labour agreement. So as of mid-June this year, my team and I started assessing nursing support workers and personal care assistants to support the aged care industry labour agreement. So put simply, there are residential aged care providers in Australia that have signed an agreement with the Department of Home Affairs to help them bring in aged care workers from overseas. So we're looking, these skills assessments are looking for applicants who have a minimum Cert 3 qualification in a relevant field. Typically what we're seeing is quite a few, I think the majority, maybe 95% of our applicants are all nurses from overseas who know that getting registration is going to be a bit of a challenge. So what we're seeing is aged care work, they're coming into Australia as aged care workers, working in the aged care sector, topping up their qualifications or doing their OSCE through the NMBA, their exam to get registration, and then progressing to become a registered nurse. So that's only in its infancy. I think we're looking at just over 4 months now, and that's had a pretty steady uptake. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this space in the coming months, given the shortage of workers in aged care. So that's just, I'm not going to talk about that today. We will be running a separate webinar on the aged care industry labour agreement and the remit that ANMAC has. There is a third ANSCO code that the Australian Community Workers Association, we work with them closely to ensure that the these aged care workers are appropriately assessed. So if you're a nurse overseas and you would like to come and migrate to Australia, the first thing we suggest you do is obtain registration to practice. So to do this, you need to go to the NMBA website, nmba.gov.au, I'm pretty sure it is, and follow the process there. They have streams. So depending on where your initial qualification is, you'll need to follow the appropriate pathway there. Once you've obtained registration, so that's not us, so we don't have anything to do with that process, you're eligible to apply for a migration skills assessment. The reason we say registration is the first step is 95% of our applicants need to do the exam for registration. So we don't have a large number coming from UK, Canada, Ireland, the US and Hong Kong. So they're the countries where the minimum the bachelor qualification is equivalent to an Australian bachelor qualification. I'll touch on that in the next slide as to different application types. But definitely start the registration process with the NMBA because that does take the longest. And then once you've got your registration, you can apply for a modified skills assessment, which is the cheaper of the skills assessments, and they take between 4 and 6 weeks in total. Finally, you've got your visa application with the Department of Home Affairs. We're not in a position to comment on the visa application process for the Department of Home Affairs, but certainly we have an understanding of what's required, and if a skills assessment is required as part of your visa application, we're there to provide that service. So we do communicate quite regularly with the Department of Home Affairs, so we do have a good working relationship, and we rely on one another to communicate, changes and appropriate intel as it comes in as required. So they're the 3 main steps: register with the NMBA, come to us for a skills assessment, and then progress to your visa application with the Department of Home Affairs. So we've got 4 types of skills assessments. The modified skills assessment is the assessment I just referred to before, the one that you would apply for once you are registered to practice as a nurse in Australia or New Zealand. We say New Zealand there because we do know that if you're registered in New Zealand, you will get registration in Australia. So you are eligible to apply for that modified skills assessment. The Modified Plus skills assessment we introduced probably 2 or 3 years ago, and that's in recognition of those applicants that are offshore, so living overseas. They've applied to AHPRA for registration, and they've received a letter from AHPRA and the NMBA to say that they're eligible to practice as a nurse in Australia once they're presented in person. So that means you need to arrive in Australia in order to formalise and finalise your registration, so we're essentially coming in just before that part of your journey, and we can do a skills assessment at that point based on the letter the correspondence you've received from AHPRA. The third skills assessment is a full skills assessment, and that's the most expensive of the skills assessments, and that's for applicants that have the bachelor degree from the UK, Canada, the US, Hong Kong or Ireland in nursing and midwifery and are not yet registered in Australia. The added cost here, Len, is due to the need for us to the assessment of transcripts. So we look at theory and practice hours, but also there's an English language requirement in this full skills assessment. They take that a skills assessment takes around the same time, and that's for nurses and midwives who are still offshore, considering coming over and just getting the ball rolling in terms of what steps they need to take in order to migrate. The fourth skills assessment is the direct care skills assessment that I just touched on briefly before, the new one. So I'm not going to go into that one, but that's for applicants offshore who meet the requirements to come and work as a direct care worker in Australia, but attached to an employer. You can't apply for that unless, well, you can apply for it. The idea with these skills assessments is you actually need to find an employer who's going to employ you in order to progress that migration process. Okay, so I am going to walk through the actual process live on this webinar, but towards the end. So just briefly now, I'm going to go through what your experience should look like. So initially you need to create portal access. So that's by going to the ANMAC website and creating portal access, top right-hand side. And you need to use an email address. So an email address that you've not used before. So if you've been a previous applicant, you can't use that same email address because that's essentially your unique identifier. So we ask that you use an email address that you can access, and you're going to need to create a password as well for that. There's an application form, online application form, and then you'll have to make payment. I will say here, we have had lots of issues recently with payment coming out of some African countries. We ask you to be patient with us and use Google Chrome, do things like clear your cache and inform your bank that you are trying to make a payment. If all else fails, please do send us an email and we can make alternative arrangements, but we are trying to work through that. But unfortunately, we have no control over what the banks consider to be fraud. Once that's done, you have access to your portal. So you're in control now of uploading your documents. Your documents include things like evidence of qualification, your transcript. If you've got an enrolled nursing diploma here in Australia and you've done a proficiency certificate in Nepal, we do need to see the certificate from overseas. Your graduation certificate from overseas. So we want to see your complete nursing history as part of the skills assessment. So it's your responsibility to upload your documents. If you do have a migration agent, please follow up with them that they've uploaded the correct documents. We've had a couple come through recently where the agent has made an application and has failed to follow up and upload the documents. So essentially the upload of documents triggers putting you in the queue. And then you basically are assessed by the date that you apply. As long as you upload your documents, you're assessed by the date that you apply. An assessor will contact you once your skills assessment has started, either to ask you for more information or to provide you with your outcome letter. So you're emailed an outcome letter that you can then use to support your visa application. We do have a reissue process that is available to you for 2 years or a year and 9 months from the date you're given your outcome letter. So that's to enable you to come back and for example, change your ANSCO code or add a period of work experience that you've accrued over the course of a year in Australia. So there's those options. That information is on our website, but also you're very welcome to give us a call to ask to explain that a little bit more in detail. So I've touched on briefly what evidence you need to provide. I'm going to go through here and show you some examples of what those documents look like. I've got here a passport. For obvious reasons, we've blacked out quite a bit of it, but we'd like to see the whole bio data page. We've got examples of photos. So you can see here there's lots that aren't accepted. So essentially what we want to see is a clear photo of you face on, ideally with a white background. We do see lots of selfies come through. We don't have a problem with selfies as long as it's a clear image of you against a clear, a clean background. But please do avoid putting filters on your photos. Graduation documents from all programs that have resulted in registration. So that includes university degrees, TAFE courses, and importantly, any exams you've completed. So if you're from India and you've gone to the UK and you've completed your OSCE for registration with the NMC, we do ask for evidence of that. So that can be as simple as just uploading the screenshots that you've received in email form. I've done it again. And here's some examples of some documents. So we've got your graduation certificate here. There's a copy of a Filipino transcript and then a Master of Science in Nursing. So it's all qualifications you have obtained throughout your nursing career. Professional references aren't a mandatory requirement unless you are requesting an ANSCO code other than registered nurse, NEC, midwife or enrolled nurse. I'll touch briefly again shortly on ANSCO codes. So if you do submit a professional reference, there is an example template on our website. So we ask that it is written by a nursing supervisor, and if it isn't written by a nursing supervisor, an explanation as to why, and that's quite reasonable. If you work in a GP practice, you're perhaps the only nurse, so the treating doctor will be the one, the main doctor will be the one that's writing that reference. So we just need to read that detail. Here's an example of two professional references, one from overseas in Qatar and another one from Greenslopes in Queensland. So we do ask that it details your clinical skills and competencies. That's essentially what it is you're applying to us for, a skills assessment. So we want to know that the skills you say you have or you're claiming to have by your selection of an ANSCO code is evidenced in the reference. The English language test, which I touched on before, is only for the full skills assessment. We accept results from 2 test sittings taken within 6 months of each other. We also now accept the IELTS 1 skill retake as of maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago. And I am aware just recently that TOEFL is no longer being accepted by the Department of Home Affairs. So that might be one to investigate if you were considering to do TOEFL. We have not yet made a decision as to whether or not we will accept TOEFL, but it seems a bit silly for us to accept it and then for you to not be able to progress with the Department of Home Affairs. So yes, I do encourage you to look into that. What do I mean by an ANSCO code? The ANSCO is a classification system used by the Australian government and provides information on skill level, qualifications and experience. So applicants are required to nominate a code that is closely linked to their qualification and experience. We do get a lot of questions about the ANSCO codes. Put simply, if you're, it's up to you. We can't really provide that advice. If you are being sponsored, if your employer is sponsoring you, then you will need to nominate the code under which they are sponsoring you. That's really important. And so therefore, in order to get that code, you need to have a minimum 3 months work in that area. So the ANSCO code correlates. You choose the code that most correlates with the area in which you've worked. If you're in doubt, ANSCO NEC, or talk to the Department of Home Affairs about what's most appropriate for your visa. And then the ANSCO code for enrolled nurses is ANSCO 411411. Midwife's a different code again. But we have, I think there's about 17 nursing specialties. So we've got perioperative, for example, critical care and emergency, disability and rehab. It really does cover across the spectrum. There is also nurse practitioner ANSCO code, nurse researcher, nurse manager, all of which are in the process, of being reviewed by the Australian Bureau of Statistics. The ANSCO review has been going on since, I think, October last year, and it's continuing. So it looks like there will be some changes to the ANSCO codes in the not too distant future, but essentially it's just helping government work out where everybody's going. Fraud is a big issue. It is the false representation of facts. We do see fraud in our work. We see falsified professional references, including false dates of employment and forged signatures. I've got one here in front of me where a falsified letterhead, including the footer. There's a spelling error in the footer that was picked up in the assessment. And on further investigation, the applicant confirmed that yes, it was created rather than provided to her. So we certainly discourage that because there are implications. Fake graduation documents, we don't see as many of them, but certainly heightened. We are very aware of the need to really look at these documents that are coming through and making sure the information provided in these documents matches up with registration dates and claims of work. We recently had some altered English language test results come through to us. So when we look at these test results fairly regularly, like I said, I've been here for 9 years, so I know what they look like. There was something just a little bit off. And sure enough, when we went to verify the test results in the IELTS verification portal, there was no history of that applicant. So what happens when we confirm fraud? We will come back to you and ask you to provide an explanation as to how we've, uncovered something, whatever it may be. But ultimately, if we've got confirmed fraud, it will result in an unsuitable outcome for your ANMAC skills assessment. Even if you've come back to us for a reissue and you've submitted something fraudulent in the reissue, we will find the overall outcome of that skills assessment unsuitable. That does mean you're locked out from applying for another skills assessment for 2 years. That's 2 years from the date that that decision has been made. And the Department of Home Affairs will also be notified of the fraudulent activity. So we do take this quite seriously. So we do ask that you obtain, in particular, professional references properly. So we verify all claims of work experience. So if you don't provide us with relevant contact information, we will come back to you and ask for that. And we do other checks to make sure the information that's coming to us is genuine. What does the outcome of my assessment look like? So you receive a letter in an email that's got some unique identifiers on there that are shared with the Department of Home Affairs. That's how they verify the information you give them with the information. That's how they verify the information you give them. Basically, we will list your qualifications. If you've submitted work experience and that work is reportable, we will list the work, and there'll also be an issue date and detail as to the expiry of the letter. The letter is signed by one of a few of us here in the office, and then, like I said, the Department of Home Affairs know what they're looking for. The Department of Home Affairs does come to us fairly regularly and ask us to provide evidence of, like, for example, copies of the documentation we've received, and then they'll cross-check with information they've received But yeah, like I said earlier on, we have a fairly good relationship with the Department of Home Affairs, and we're constantly sharing relevant information. I've got a couple of, I just put these 3 questions up earlier, just thinking about the main questions that we get asked in these webinars. The first one is, do I need a migration agent? I can just tell you that currently 3 in 10 applications have a migration agent. If you have a migration agent, great. They manage the process for you, not just the skills assessment process. Just make sure you do your due diligence though, and get a migration agent that's actually authorised to work as a migration agent in Australia. We are hearing some nightmarish stories of migration agents taking money from people and promising skills assessments, and they're submitting fraudulent documents, and that brings the applicant unstuck. When we reach a point where we're trying to verify something that's confirmed fraud, if you haven't nominated that you've got a migration agent, but then you tell us that you have actually used a migration agent, we don't actually have much to go on in terms of determining whether or not you're suitable or not for a skills assessment. So just do your due diligence there and make sure you get someone that's reputable. There are many great migration agents that we've worked with over the years that do a very, very good job and are very committed to the work that they do. So sorry, that's a bit of a, I'm not answering that one very directly, but look, our process, the standalone and max skills assessment process, is quite straightforward, and my team are online, and we have a call centre from 10 till 4 Monday to Friday. They will answer any questions you have in relation to how to do your skills assessment. But if you do choose a migration agent, well, then they just act on your behalf. That second question there, how do I get a job? Look, we get many, many, many emails a day saying, I'm a nurse, can I have a job? We aren't an employment agency. I would suggest that you jump on Seek. There's so many big job agencies, what are they called? Recruitment agencies out there that advertise. So it would just be a matter of you jumping online and looking for jobs, calling around. If you're in Australia, call around to your local hospitals, look on different jobs boards, sign up for those. But we aren't in a position to provide you with specific employment advice. But yeah, it's you've just got to commit to it and make phone calls. Step out of your comfort zone, make phone calls, introduce yourself, and go about it that way. How long do I need to wait to get the outcome of my skills assessment? In an ideal world, between 4 and 6 weeks. We've had a significant increase in demand recently, and like I touched on before, the verification of all claims of work experience does take time, and we are quite passionate about making sure we do that part of our job really well. So if we do have an application that has multiple professional references, that does slow us down. So yeah, we work hard, we work fast. If you do have questions, send us an email. The turnaround time, I think, for responses to email is within 24 hours. So you're more likely to get a response on that rather than the 6-hour window when you're calling. Sorry, just bear with me. Okay, so what we're going to do here, so this here is all the contact details. So I think you can scan that there and you will get this information. So I might just leave that up for a moment. I've said here the new website is coming soon. It did say new website coming 2023. I am often the optimist, but it's it's mid-October and we're fast approaching Christmas. So there is a new website coming soon that will be leaner and cleaner and a whole lot more straightforward than what I believe it currently is. So that's why I emphasise, send us an email or phone us if you have any questions, because I recognise the current state of play on our website. Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment. You're just going to see my ugly mug for a minute, and all right. Okay, so I'm going to just walk through this now. So this is a pre-recorded video that I'm going to speak over. So essentially, you'll see the little mouse moving and I'll talk to it as it goes through. So that's where you're going to log in. You're going to create access here. You're going to register. And as I said earlier, it's really important that you use an email address that you can access. And also, if you've got a previous skills assessment with ANMAC, that you use a different email address. So you can see here, the emphasis to use a strong password, and then the whole I'm not a robot, and we register. So that seems pretty straightforward. This is what you should see when you are applying online. Then you will log back out, log back in. So essentially that's to test that you've got, we're checking here that you've received the email that says you've created your account. So it's important that you receive that. So if you don't receive that email, then we suggest you start again. It didn't work. And then now we're going to log back in, and we're going to go to the application form, which when you see it, just huge thanks to Liam and Viviana who did this prior to today's webinar. And then you submit your application. So this has taken you to the forms. So like I said, new website coming, that'll look a little bit prettier. We're going to apply for the modified skills assessment here. That's that skills assessment that I referred to earlier on when I said get your registration first with the NMBA and then come to us and apply for a modified skills assessment. So you're looking at 395 Australian dollars for that skills assessment. Here's that form. So you can expand that form out to make it easier to read. And then you go through here. Now, that tick box, I confirm that I have read and understood the online assessment information. That's really important. I know we see those tick boxes often and we just tick it and we move on. But above that, you will see it says, please complete the assessment form below. By proceeding with this form, you are confirming that you hold current registration in Australia or New Zealand and you meet the assessment requirements. So that's just a confirmation of understanding, making the rest of your assessment process fairly straightforward. You can see here you're just required to put in your personal details, country of birth. We do get quite a few people are saying country of birth is Australia. We do ask that the correct country of birth is put in there. That just saves our data cleanup. That just makes it a little bit easier for us. And then if you're not using a migration agent, then you don't need to worry about the agent details below. It is handy to have a postal address. I think migration agents tend to put their address as instead of the personal under the personal contact details. We encourage migration agents to actually put the applicant's contact details so that we have both. It's not uncommon for applicants to cancel the use of an agent throughout their assessment process, and that just saves the gathering of more information, or new information, I should say. What country did you gain your initial registration? So great if it's Australia. Quite often, even though you've been registered in India, Qatar and New Zealand, applicants still do put Australia. So once again, if you can think back to where you got your initial nursing qualification or midwifery qualification, popping that country in there, that goes to data as well. And then putting in that current registration number. So we, on the odd occasion, do get applicants applying when they don't have registration, so they don't meet the requirements, and they will fudge a registration number there. So we'll often see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 as the registration number. Applications that are made when someone's not eligible will be found unsuitable. So I think I'm just going to try. Well, I might just. Can I go back a little bit? I've just missed that. Maybe just go back a little bit. Oh no, I've started from the beginning. Hang on. It's all right. I'll sort it. Sorry, everyone. Thought I'd be clever here. So I just wanted to show you this bit here. By proceeding with the application, I declare that the information in this application and attachments are true and complete. So if you are planning on submitting fraudulent documents, this is meant to stop you, because you're meant to stop and think, okay, yep, everything's genuine. Your intention is that you're migrating. You're the person photographed. You've read and understood the skills assessment information. You understand ANMAC's privacy statement, and you consent to us collecting information in accordance with that privacy statement. We also encourage you, for example, when your referee is providing you with a professional reference, we encourage you to tell them that we will likely contact them, because that line there, I give my consent for ANMAC to verify any information that I have provided, that's where that's relevant. Okay, continue. I'll just try and fast track that a little bit. All right, payment details. So that's pretty straightforward. Credit card type, credit card number, expiry date, and card holder name. I suspect there's another change to that, and the CVC number that's on the back of your card is now a requirement. That was in an attempt to try and address the issues we were having coming out of some of those African countries that I mentioned earlier. So that may be a requirement. You will see in a moment confirmation of payment is received in an email. I can't emphasise the importance of receiving this information enough, because that confirms that we have received your application. So, you know, often you put your credit card details in and it kind of just ticks over and over and over, you're not sure what's happened. Go to your inbox to see that you've received that email. I'm pretty sure we say you should receive the email within 24 hours of making payment. In my experience, so from the various testings that we've done online here, that email does come through fairly quickly. Yeah, there you go. It says within 24 hours. Please email us and we will follow it up. So we will be able to see in our system whether or not we have an application with a payment attached. So you can see here, we're going to your inbox and there it is. So confirmed cash sale. I will say at this point, if you apply for the wrong application, if you apply for a professional reference assessment and you don't need one, we in the past have just automatically refunded you, but because it happens so often and it ties us up administratively quite a bit, there is now a $60 service fee attached to that. So if you've paid $145 for a professional reference assessment, you'll only receive $85 back. So please do make sure when you are handing over your details and paying money that you are paying for the right thing, because it may cost you $60. All right, so we've got here you've got your online applications completed. That was that form that you filled out. The application status isn't as intuitive as it probably could be, and that will be improved in the new website. So this is where you will upload your documents. So you can see you've got your passport biodata page, passport sized colour photograph. That has to come through to us as a JPEG or a JPG or a PNG. So this is just a quick example of how you do this. And once again, we want to emphasise the need to only provide us with quality documents. So we suggest a minimum 600 DPI, so dots per image, and that's if you're scanning your documents, you can do that setting on your scanner, but just making sure the image is clear. So that's what we're assessing. If we've got any concerns at all about the quality of the documentation, we will ask for it to be re-uploaded. So you're just making sure here that you are uploading all of the requirements, and you can see there when it's uploaded that you'll have file information and the ability if you needed to, it says there to remove it. You can remove it from your view, but I'm pretty sure once it's there, it stays there. Emphasising again the need to submit transcripts when you're submitting your graduation documents, and then just one professional reference I think is being uploaded here, and you can see there that's where it is. This is where the important part though. I'm pretty sure. Oh, yep, we're just checking to make sure we've uploaded all the things we need to upload. And then we're going to scroll down the bottom. See that save button? We think it should be bigger and perhaps a different colour, but we need to really emphasise the need here to select save. So then that shoots through, and as I touched on before, you'll automatically go into the list. So if you applied beginning of September, for example, and didn't upload documents until early October, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't mean you're way back in the queue. Because you applied early September, you will actually go to the top of the queue. So, you know, I suppose there's a window there for you to really focus. Once you put your application in, focus on getting your documents right and uploading all that's required. You've got a couple of weeks up your sleeve there. So once you've received the outcome of this skills assessment, this is what it looks like. It's an attachment in an email. It emphasises here that it's not registration for practice. So often there is that confusion that we are registration. We are not registration. I cannot emphasise that enough. I think we're going to quickly go back in here and have a look at the option to, you can see here your status is assessment completed, results sent. Oh, and now we're logging out. So when I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. So earlier on, we talked about I've lost my train of thought. Professional references. So say you've received your outcome letter from ANMAC and you have accrued 12 months of work experience working at a hospital in Melbourne, and you want to add that work experience for points to your letter of determination. You can go back into your portal and request a reissue. Also, if your employment conditions change, if your employment arrangements change and you're now going to be sponsored, originally your skills assessment was issued as 254499, not elsewhere classified, but you're now going to be employed, sponsored as working on a medical ward, and you've got that experience, you can apply for a reissue to that ANSCO, to the medical ANSCO code. So that does bring us to, so we're 50.
The questions.
We can go through some questions.
Yeah, so Taryn.
Well, I'm going to just quick shout out to Taryn, who is one of our senior assessors. She's online and I keep seeing her name pop up. She's been answering questions as we go. So thanks, Taz, for that. So I'm just wondering if how we want to do this.
She can tell you questions, the common questions, and then you can answer.
So Taryn, are you able to turn your mic on and maybe throw some questions out there? Can you see them?
Yeah, I can do that.
I've thrown it. You did.
We can't hear you.
I don't think we can hear you, Taz.
Can you hear me? No.
I'm just wondering if there are any specific questions.
So okay, well they can hear me. So
they can hear, we can't.
Okay. Well, I've got the chat that I've been doing up here, so I can answer some of the questions anyway. So thank you for coming. So depending on where your qualification is from, yes, you do need your ARPA registration first, but that does just depend on the skills assessment you're going to apply for, okay? So if it's UK, Hong Kong, US, Canada.
Okay,
Right.
so have you all lost Taryn?
You guys muted. So what about everyone hear me now?
Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah, so it depends on what skills assessment, but as a rule, general rule, 95% of you will need ARPA registration before you don't apply before your ARPA registration. Otherwise, you will delay your application because you'll have to go into the back of the queue to make it fair on everyone else who's applied before you. What else was there? Okay, there's one here about the labour agreement. There are 9 aged care providers, I think, at the moment that have applied, that have signed on for the labour agreement. Let me just find.
Do you want me to put a list in the chat? A link in the chat to that? I can do that. Oh, someone's already doing on it.
So what other questions have I had? A lot of questions around registration, which I've just said. The ARPA OSCE is undertaken in Adelaide, and as far as I'm aware, it's the only place you can do it at the moment. Yep.
There are quite a few changes coming out of the NMBA. There's quite a few consultations happening at the moment. So I would encourage you to just perhaps sign up to the NMBA's newsletter so that you can stay on top of what changes they are. Things like how many OSCEs there will be a year, in what states and territories they're going to be offered, English language requirements. There's quite a bit of movement. Yeah. I can see, Taryn, you've done an amazing job answering questions as we've gone. Thanks for that.
Okay. So I'm just going to go at the bottom of the chat just to see what.
Or mute or something?
Am I on mute again? No.
No.
Okay. So current wait time is 8 to 9 weeks from date of application. We cannot prioritise applications because that's not fair on everybody else. So please don't ring us and ask us to push it through. There are certain reasons why we can, but that's case by case. So ring us if you think you have a case for that. I'm turning. this video off because it looked ridiculous. Okay. So yeah, we will be upgrading our website at some point. Sorry, I keep losing my mouse. I'm just going to close this. Okay. Makes it easier for me. Here's the chance. Okay, UK words. Okay, so I've answered this question. Is it possible for a UK working nurse to get English waived? It again depends on the skills assessment you're applying for. So if you're applying for the full skills assessment, no, you need the English test. Even if your qualifications and all of your schooling was in English, you still need an English test. Yeah, but if you're applying for the modified, you will not need one.
Yep, and that's where we recommend applying to APRA for registration. I understand there are some waivers in place, so you might be better off going down that pathway.
Check into the chat. You can just come up and look the chat. But no, if something's come up, I don't think I'm going.
Oh, right. So Taz, are you?
She answered some, but there is another one.
Yeah, so I'm just in the Q&A wasn't really working, so everyone's just
On the
putting
chat.
questions in on the chat. So you might want to just jump there and
Okay.
that's where the majority of the questions are at the moment.
I've just put a link to the current aged care providers that have signed the labour agreement for who was asking for that. IELTS band currently 7 across all 4 in reading, writing, speaking, listening. I understand there's some changing coming possibly. I've got one here from Kamal. Will change of ANSCO code impact on clients who have obtained skills assessment and have not yet applied for a visa? No, should not. You would just submit the most recent piece of work that we've given you. So it's a letter and then you receive an updated letter.
A waiver pathway for UK nurses? No.
Is there one?
They were asking if it's a waiver pathway for UK nurses or something. In the question repetitive.
What will the skill assessment pathway be for UK and US? Well, it depends what your qualification is. If you've got an Indian qualification, we would suggest you go through APRA. If you've got a bachelor degree from the UK, we would likely accept a skills assessment. Can't guarantee you the outcome, but certainly, once again, it's about registration to practice, which is what you need in order to successfully migrate. Then you need to jump through that hoop first. If obtained skills assessment as NEC, only need the reference letter. Yes, that's correct. So you would apply for a reissue and submit the professional reference that supports that work in that new area, and that's all that's required. Nicola Donnelly has asked, if ANMAC expires before visa nomination, do you need to do full application? So we don't renew it. We never have. So you would need to apply for a skills assessment again, completely. We wouldn't ask for registration verification from overseas if you've been in Australia that whole time. But I understand the Department of Home Affairs wait times have decreased, so it's less likely that this will happen, but don't hold me to that. Supervised practice questions, you're going to need to talk to our accreditation team. You can email them on, I'll write the email address now. Ask them specifically. They'll be able to help you on that.
If someone asks, will change of ANSCO code impact on clients who have obtained skill assessment and have not yet applied for visa?
No.
Like, will change of ANSCO code impact on clients who have obtained skill assessment and have not yet applied?
No. Does that make process slow down at the end of the year? What a great question. We do have Christmas. We do have a break. Our portal, I can tell you now, will close on December the 20th. So we won't accept new applications. So if you've got an application in the system, you will be able to log in and upload your documents, but no new applications will be accepted. The portal will reopen on around the 10th, Wednesday the 10th. So we close the portal for 3 weeks so that when we're on a break, which I think the office shuts down for 2 weeks, if you do have any issues with the system, there's no one there to help you. So we close it down for 3 weeks, which does mean wait times get pushed out, but December for us is all about getting those wait times down as low as possible. So the idea would be we do it 3 weeks just before we shut down. So add 3 weeks when we get back, we're still only at 6. Yep. Fang is saying, hi, I did my skills assessment for support workers on the 12th of July. Are you still waiting? Send us an email to skilledmigration@anmac.org.au. And the team can, because that doesn't sound right. Yeah, Fang, just send us an email. I've just popped the email address there. Oh, so's Taryn. Thanks, Taryn. What are we thinking? So we can sit online and keep asking questions, or we can end the webinar and you can send us an email. So if you've got any questions, I've seen a couple of questions about this being shared online, which we will. And also, so every one of you that's logged in today, we have your email address. So you will receive a copy of that in an email. We're also going to get a survey out to you sometime next week. Ideally, really raw feedback would be great. We want to offer these more regularly. If there's a way we can cut down, and if you think I need to talk less about the regulation stuff at the beginning, not sure, but give us that feedback so that we can improve the service we provide. And if you've got any other feedback about services, let us know. Like I said, new website coming. We're really keen to make this a really positive experience for you all. So we're happy to end it. Even though I didn't speak to you or you didn't speak to me, thank you for joining us. And Taryn, like I said, thank you for answering questions live. And Viviana, who I've got sitting here next to me, she's amazing in her marketing gigs. So thank you for joining. We will be offering more of these. Yeah, look forward to hearing from you soon.